players, and that's why this book was so much fun for me to do as quick as I had to write it after the season, because you know, seeing the outpouring of what happened with the Giants winning the World Series and seeing 1 million people show up for the parade downtown, the biggest civic event in San Francisco history. You know, the Giants moved people in a way that was pretty darn special, and you know, I was lucky enough to be there every day, not only last year but the 7 years prior to that. So I got to see Tim Lincecum from the day he first came into the big leagues, or be there in the draft room the day that they drafted Buster Posey. And you know, some of those guys' stories obviously began long before 2010, when so many different threads came together. And that's what's neat for me. A season, guys come from all sorts of different walks of life, and they all come together and form a common bond. And the season becomes a story where they all have little character arcs, and that's what I wanted to try to do with the book. Go through the season, tell you everything that happened, but also as somebody stepped into their sort of spotlight moment, just sort of take that opportunity to step back and tell you what they're all about, what makes them tick. And there was just no shortage of incredible stories on this team, whether it be an Andres Torres who spent his career in the minor leagues, or a Cody Ross who was claimed off waivers and then hit 2 homers off Roy Halladay, which was the Goliath of the postseason, to Lincecum being a guy who was a little bit misfit himself, even though he was so good in the playoffs. He obviously is not a guy who all scouts thought would be that kind of pitcher, just because of how he looks and his size and the way he throws. So that's why it was so much fun for me to put this book together and take all the reporting that we know is here one day, gone the next in the newspaper. It's ephemeral. It's made of paper, and it's lining someone's bird cages the day after people have read it. So I can take all that reporting and put it in a little bit more of a permanent form. And the response has been great, and everyone's been just so nice and complimentary, and this is a great turnout, and I'm really happy to see everybody here today. And really, I probably operate best with a little Q&A, and I'm sure none of you will have questions as tough as Ralph Barbieri, so when he has me on KMBR. So if I could take maybe a dozen or 20 or so questions, if you have a few, maybe we can just do that. You want to start?
When Cody Ross came to
Well, I think with him it was a real shock that the Florida Marlins let him go on waivers and basically let him go for nothing, because he'd been there for several years and felt like he was a part of the organization. I think he probably had to understand there was a chance that he probably wouldn't be back the following year. He was getting a little more expensive for the operation. But I think it was more a shock factor than anything else. And it's like anything when you come to a new environment, you're a little unsettled, unsure, but certainly once he started to contribute and he became part of the group very quickly, and now of course he's really happy to be a Giant.
I thought he was supposed to go to San Diego Padres.
Well, several teams put in waiver requests for him. In fact, the Phillies may have put in a waiver claim on him as well, but the Giants were first in the pecking order. So wouldn't that be something if the Phillies did a whammy on them? And it's going to be really interesting when he goes to Philadelphia next week. I'm sure they're going to boo him like he's going to do. So, and I'm sure he's going to be prepared for that too. Yes?
It's going to be easy. Is that a World Series or anything?
No, but I think that you mentioned during the introduction that I was official scorer for the All-Star game in 2007 at AT&T Park. So the league saw fit to give me a ring, and I got to call Ichiro Suzuki's inside the park home run.
Nice.
And if I'd called that a triple and an air, he would have called up to the press box and yelled at me. Yeah.
Question you probably get asked a bunch, but how do you balance journalism and fandom?
Well, it's a good question. I think that sports journalism, so many other departments of the newspaper call the sports department the toy box. But really, it's just as serious journalism as every other department. I mean, when Barry Bonds was on the Giants, there were days I had to be a legal expert, medical expert. Obviously, you got to be able to figure out someone's batting average or on-base percentage pretty quick. So I think a journalist has to have a lot of well-rounded tools and be able to tell a story. And obviously the Giants had so many great stories to tell. But the main thing is you have to be professional. And people always ask me, did you root for the team or do you root for the guys? And you can't help if there are people you like or you show some affinity toward that you don't want to see them do poorly. But for me, when you're a reporter covering the team, really practicalities are the most important thing, and that's deadline. So what I root for are no extra innings, no late lead changes, no rain delays. Because when Brian Wilson blows a save, I hit the delete key a lot more than I had to do. So that's really what I root for as a reporter. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes?
Do you think the Giants are going to be active before the trade deadline for like something like a no trade?
I think they will. I think they would rather take on someone's salary than trade prospects, because Bill Newcomb really believes in a farm system and not making moves for short-term gain. That obviously got the Giants in a lot of trouble during the Barry Bonds years, making moves with a sort of a short-term plan. But they also know that, you know, they've sold out every home game this year. They want to capitalize on this. They want to be the Yankees of the West Coast. And to do that, and to really be that team that has a national following, you got to win. And maybe try to win another World Series. And they know, Brian Sabian's made no secret that he knows that this offense is deficient. It's not a championship offense, and they need to do something to address it. So whether it's Beltran or a Michael Kadire from the Twins, or maybe even both, or some combination, I think they realize they've got to go out and do some things. And I think they will.
So along those lines, you know, it's pretty obvious the Giants value Wheeler pretty highly and don't want to deal him in a trade. What about a secondary prospect like Surkamp? He's doing very well this year. Do you think that that might be a name that Sabian would be willing to give up?
That's a good question. It depends on who'd be coming back, probably. I mean, Jason Stoffel's a pretty decent player, and he was a closer at San Jose. I don't know if any of you go to any San Jose Giants games or saw him there, but I actually told Brandon Belt about the trade, the Keppinger trade, the other day, and he said, who do we give up? And I told him Stoffel, and he was surprised. He was pretty good. So, but Surkamp is probably the next starting pitcher who would come up, should they need one. And obviously they have 6 guys right now with Barry Zito, Jonathan Sanchez on the way back. So they don't have a whole lot of inventory of starting pitching right now. And that's the most important thing for them. That's what they're built on. So I don't think they would give him up very easily, but they probably would if they had the right player coming back. Yes?
Yeah. With Sanchez coming back, how do you think the starting rotation sorts itself out?
Well, I think that Barry Zito's got, he's going to be starting in Philadelphia, but he's pitching on the same day that Sanchez is. Sanchez is going to be making a rehab start in Fresno on Friday, so his day to pitch would be the same day that they're on the same schedule, basically, is what I'm trying to say. And if Zito has a bad start in Philly, then you know, maybe Sanchez steps right in for him. And even if Sanchez has a great start for Fresno in his next rehab outing, maybe they even decide that they just want to make the move right there. Pretty clear that Barry Zito is number 6 out of the 6 pitchers. Yes?
And what do you think about Zito's future with the team? Are they going to keep him, trade him, just bite the bullet and let him go, or where do you see that?
It's a lot of money. It's 2 more years beyond this one, and then a $7 million buyout after that on his option year. And so he still owed quite a lot of money, and it would be pretty unprecedented for them to just let him go at this stage. I mean, we all know that he's probably not going to go out and challenge for any Cy Young awards anymore. His best days are past him. He's trying to get hitters out with what he has left. Jamie Moyer pitched a lot longer as a lefty who throws in the low 80s. You know, he could go out and still outfox hitters on certain days. He had 3 really good starts after coming off the DL. So I don't think the Giants are ready to punt him yet, but they definitely have his attention. He has their attention. You know, they're trying to make the best of what everybody knows is a difficult situation.
What's the source of the friction, you know, between the Giants and Kareem? They seem to be talking.
Yeah, and he seems to think that when Tim Lincecum hits him, it's not always accidental. And I've asked Lincecum about it, and he said, hey, seriously, I don't mean to hit the guy. But yeah, there's definitely a little animosity there that he wanted to be a Dodger more than he wanted to be a Giant, and that feeling has been expressed by Brian Sabian. And, you know, so I guarantee nobody's going to cry for him if the Dodgers can't make payroll. I even heard a rumor a while back from somebody, you know, and I put it out there as a very, you know, hey, this is unconfirmed, take it for what it's worth, that the Dodgers might trade Uribe, swallow the money, give him back to the Giants. And Brian Sabian called the press box about 10 minutes after that hit my blog and said, you're off base on this one. Okay, that source was off the mark. Fixed that one right away. Any other questions?
Do you enjoy using Twitter?
I thought that I would not enjoy using Twitter because I like watching the game as much as I can. There's so many demands on me to report news quicker than ever. It used to be you just filed a notebook and a game story and it was in the paper the next day and that was it. And you could use a lot of your time to report and get the best possible information. And now, I'm writing breaking news on the blog, and I'm basically a wire service reporter in addition to being a beat writer and being a columnist almost on my post-game blog. So I feel kind of overwhelmed, and I thought Twitter would be one more thing that would keep me from watching the game and being able to actually spend time reporting. But I've kind of found that it's been really a great resource, and people have really latched onto it too. And I enjoy following everybody else, all the other reporters, through my Twitter feed as well. It's great for passing on injury updates, roster moves, and snarky comments. And I find that I've got more snarky comments than actual news as I go along. But people seem to like it, so all that press box banter that we've done all over the years, now you guys are in on it. So that's been kind of fun.
Just for kicks, your take on the Scott Cousins play. Good hard baseball or cheap shot?
I think you have to play to the scoreboard, and it was 6-6 in the 12th inning, and the teams were running out of players. And I think that he can't know that Buster's not going to have the ball, and he's made up his mind already. He just doesn't have the experience to know that he can change his mind. He's just going down the line. He's going out there to do a job. So I don't fault him at all for it. I didn't think it was a cheap play. However, Stephen Drew just broke his ankle, the Diamondbacks, the other day, sliding in a home plate. And I think that it's just dangerous. It's just a dangerous play, the home plate collision, for everybody involved. It's a terrible thing that happened to Buster, and I talked to him at length yesterday, and he's doing a lot better. He's going to have surgery tomorrow to take the screws out of his ankle. And he still feels pretty banged up about the whole thing, mentally as well as physically. But I just think that's baseball. That's a tough play.
Do you see? I'm sorry to waste your time, but do you see him having trouble mentally the way when like a Joe Martinez takes a shot to the head? Do you see a similar mentality, some trouble getting back out there behind the dish, like a pitcher getting hit on the mound?
If he had to go out there today, yeah, I think it would. But he'll have a whole spring training, and he thinks he's going to be 100% healthy and maybe even better than he was before. And surprised me when he said he's actually lost a little bit of weight since the injuries. I figured he'd be laid up and eating chips on the couch and probably getting a little softer on the middle. But he said he's actually lost a few pounds because he's doing all this work. And he's a pretty determined guy, as I'm sure most of you probably know. So I think he's going to get back there and get back behind the plate. And if there's some things he has to conquer mentally, I think he's just going to say, look, I have to plow ahead and do this. So, that'll be interesting.
When you see him there, in the dugout, he looks so good. All the players think that he takes the rest of it.
Yeah. Well, it really did a number on his ankle. 3 ligaments were torn, and he has a fracture. And they need to have another surgery just to take out the screws they put in to basically support or stabilize his ankle. So he's going to have to rehab from that. And one unfortunate offshoot is he's not going to be able to go to the White House with the rest of the team on Monday. Isn't that a shame? So that's really too bad. So it's an unfortunate thing that happened, and it's just remarkable that the team has a better record since he got hurt than they had at the time he got hurt. That really speaks a lot about the team. Yeah.
Have you seen the franchise, and what do you think about them letting the cameras in and the show?
Yeah, I have seen it. I've seen the first couple episodes. I didn't see the last one. Or no, I think I did. And I think it's very well done. It's definitely interesting. And the guys have been, we're around them all the time, the producers, the camera people. And there's only one crew, there's only maybe 4 people on the production staff. It's really a lot easier than when Barry Bonds had his ESPN reality series, because they were around all the time. And that was about one guy. And these guys, they do a lot of stuff with the players away from the field, telling their stories, whether it be Freddie Sanchez or Ryan Vogelsong or whoever. And they've really done a very good job staying respectful and being out of the players' way when they need to get their work done. And staying out of our way, too. I thought that it would be an intrusion, for us as beat writers, but they've actually been great. And they're part of Major League Baseball production, so they've been in Major League clubhouses. They know the rules. They know unwritten rules. So it's been a pretty seamless thing, and I think the guys, for the most part, are pretty happy with the way that they've been portrayed.
Freddie Sanchez.
They need to make a call in the next week or so on whether he's going to have surgery or not. And if they delay the surgery until August or later, then that 6 or 8 month recovery window is going to start to bleed into next year. He might miss time next year. So basically the problem is When he dislocated his shoulder, he stretched out the capsule, and the cartilage in that capsule. So he's at risk to dislocate it again if he dives for another ball. And it happens with football players all the time. With surgery to tighten up that capsule. With him, it's his throwing shoulder, and you don't always want to do that if you can avoid it. So he was given the choice between rehabbing and trying to come back this year in maybe late August, September, or having the surgery right away. But he decided to rehab. He's still doing that, so they need to test him out and start, ramping up that rehab work in the next week or so to see how he responds, and he may have to have surgery after all. I've always assumed if he comes back, it'll be sort of a fortunate kind of thing. They can't really bank on having it back this year.
It's like the team has come together with all these players on the team.
Yeah, that really, if the zaniness of last season was the story of the season, then the resilience, I think, has been the story of this season. And that's why, I forget which player I told her, I said, last year was torture, this year is survival. I mean, that's the one-word motto of this team. It's amazing the hits they've taken, and they're still finding ways to win ball games. And that tells you how good the pitching's been. Look at the bullpen has been. So many games, they might be losing, 2-1 in the 5th or 6th inning. With a lesser bullpen, it'd be 6-1 by the time it's the 8th. But the Giants have a chance to rally because Sergio Romo, Javier Lopez, those guys go out and they just deal. Affeld is much better than he was last year. Wilson is a little sketchier than he was last year, but he's getting it done. So, but that bullpen has meant everything to them, and they've found a way to win games late.
Two more questions, please, and Andrew's got one.
Yeah. Questions about instant replay, and I think that slowing down the game is a bad thing, and I don't just say that because I'm on deadline all the time. I think that the pace of game is something very important, and if instant replay can be done in a very, very quick manner, as they have with the home runs, then I think it's worth doing it for the fair and foul calls down the line. In terms of safe out calls on the bases, you're involving a lot of different calls now. We don't want to have replay stoppages, every inning. So on the home runs, it makes sense, and I think on fair or foul down the line. And when you get in the playoffs, I think maybe you might look at expanding it in the playoffs, because you hate to see something like that happen in the playoffs. But it's one of those things where the umpires are human, and is that part of the game, or an accepted part of the game, part of the romance of the game, or do you really want to get every call right all the time? And that's an interesting balance. It's a good discussion.
Last question, please.
Yeah.
Do you think Redinger is going to make a difference this year?
Sorry?
Do you think Redinger is going to make a difference this year?
Who?
Keppinger, sorry.
Oh, Keppinger. Well, he's probably not an everyday position player on a first division team, but he can hit lefties. He's always done that, and he's done it pretty well this year too since he came back. And right now with Tejada out, with Freddie Sanchez out, with Burrell out, they just need some right-handed bats. And you saw what happened. Clayton Kershaw's a great pitcher, but they had to start 3 lefties, and Torres and Burris, who don't start against lefties, and they just got run over. So they need some right-handed bats, and he's a good contact guy. So hopefully he'll be someone who can help the situation. But I don't think he's going to be like a difference maker type of guy. So thank you, everyone.